Hang on. Wow. All right. Well, good. Well, good to have you here, Kyle. Am I going to get a trophy for being most effective House Republican? So why don't you ever bring it to me? All right. So I won that award. Does it? That's good. I was MERS Member of the Year, and then Julie won the year after me. And ironically, that's in my office now because Julie's working for us as our chief of staff. So it's in my office. So she rubs it in because it's right there. Because I believe I should have won that one. I know. Well, there's not going to be a House Democrat, hopefully, that wins that award. With how ineffective they've been this term, but doing things that really matter. So, all right, are we ready? No?
Yep.
You were ready? Okay. So, no, it's good. Some of you are here today because we want to make sure we're educating you about these Democrat energy policies. We haven't dealt with energy legislation in quite some time. I think it was 2017. So, for many of the people, they haven't really gone through this the same way they have other topics. So we just wanted to make sure we're educating you on these plans. And, it's very interesting. Today in the Senate, we thought the Senate Energy Committee, they were going to come forward with some bills. And then it appears last night, as those were leaking out, they were so extreme. These Democrats have pulled them back, and they don't want to show us and put their names on them anymore. So my understanding is they're just going to give a general presentation on what the bills might look like and what direction they're going. So I found that interesting. But no matter what version there is, there's the the unspecific version that Gretchen Whitmer talked about at her second State of the State. Which I know, the people were just clamoring for this second State of the State. But the only people that saw that, by the way, were us. So we were able to look at that and figure out what these plans are. So the next one is, the House introduced version. Then you have the Senate version. So we're looking at these things, and no matter how you package this, okay, what they're doing is they're getting rid of natural gas. That's what they're doing. So by 2035, they want to ban natural gas. But even if they want to limit natural gas, or that's bad for the state. So I just want to lay out something most Michiganders understand. Number one, natural gas is a lot cleaner than coal. Significantly cleaner than coal, and it's abundant in our state and in our country. And so what this has been able to do, and it's cheap. So what this has been able to do is it's allowed us to become more energy independent as a country. It's made energy cheaper than other options. And it's been something that is reliable and allows us to meet our needs. And so as we're looking ahead, you're going to see that, if you're going to put more and more strain on this grid, you're going to need more natural gas plants in the state. You're going to need it. So whether you're eliminating natural gas or you're capping the expansion of natural gas, you're going to need more. This is really the foundation of our energy for the state and country. So, what Whitmer and the House Democrats and others are proposing here is instead to shift over to a system that would put us much more reliant on China. We looked it up. It's like 80% of these renewable energy for the, whether it's windmills or solar, these components, we looked it up, 80% of these are made in China. And you look at what they're doing with these electric cars and electric batteries and all these things, and all those rare earth materials are made in China also. So, and I'll point out, China does not care about Gretchen Whitmer's climate plan to save the earth. We looked it up. They're building 2 coal plants a week. So they're building 2 coal plants a week. They're taking our money for all of these renewable components that we're going to be buying from them, and they're just taking it to build coal plants, and to which are much more, these are much worse for the environment than these natural gas plants the Democrats want to get rid of by 2035. So you just look through that. It's making us more reliant on them. It's getting them richer at a time when they're a threat. I mean, there are problems between these countries. This is not a country you want to be reliant on more than you have to be. So, and we looked at this. We believe it's going to raise your utility bill 95%. These guys plan. And if you're one of these commercial or industrial customers, it's more like 140% under their plan to, and you can see, I'll have someone explain this later, but we tried to give you a picture here to understand what it would look like if you put all their windmills all over like they want to. But, I mean, I know they told me it would take 3 Kalamazoo counties. That's how many solar panels they'd have to put up to do this plan. It's pretty interesting. And that's a lot of space in the state to put up solar panels. And you can see here how many windmills it would take. So just going through this, though, I think it's going to make I want to point out Gavin Newsom, Governor Whitmer's competition for president. This guy came up with one of these too. And I think his was 2045. But he put up this 100% mandate that we're going renewable. And if you look, just recently, what we're seeing is he's pulling back from that, and they're allowing natural gas and nuclear because they've been dealing with these brownouts. And so, these others are going to talk more about that, but, you're seeing Newsom walk away from that. So it's kind of interesting. So you're going to need these other things, natural gas and nuclear, which Graham will talk a little bit about, in order to actually meet the demands of this state when it comes to energy moving forward. So I'm going to turn it over to Graham. You want to go ahead?
Yep.
And we'll go from there.
Thank you, Leader. State Rep Graham Filler, 93rd House District, and going to talk a little bit about the nuclear component and also what's happening in the state of Michigan regarding nuclear energy. I do chair the bipartisan, bicameral legislative nuclear caucus, and I am also an attorney, and I was an attorney at the Michigan Public Service Commission working on rate cases before I came here. I have presented at some national conferences about Michigan's nuclear footprint, and we are a top 10 nuclear state in America. Not a lot of people know that. I think that's an awesome thing to mention. I did also sponsor a bill that turned into law last term. That was a bipartisan bill signed by the governor that says Michigan has to do a feasibility study regarding nuclear energy in the state of Michigan. And we've already had a call with the MPSC. This was last week. And they used words like reliable, clean energy, consistent generation for Michigan. And then they even talked about the SMRs that people are investing in, probably in Michigan eventually, but nationally and internationally. That stands for small modular reactors. So people are not paying attention to this, but remarkable things are happening in Michigan regarding nuclear. And we have Fermi 2 down in Monroe area, which is going to ask to extend its lifeline 50 years, 60 years, and that's just remarkably stable, clean energy that goes right into our grid and has been for many years. We have Fermi 3, which they have the ability to build another reactor, I believe a little smaller, but still massive, massive energy, again, clean, going into our grid. And then Palisades, I don't know if you guys are paying attention, but Palisades, which was taken offline over here on the south, over on the water, I believe it's in that lakeside district over here. $150 million from the state legislature appropriated in the last budget to Palisades, and then Palisades has found a buyer for their nuclear energy, which is a major, major deal because you have to find someone to buy the energy and put it into the grid. And that was sort of the last domino we were waiting to fall before we think the DOE will give the okay and invest the billion or billion two to get that nuclear plant back online. And so Michigan is a major state. Oh, SMRs, small modular reactors. Dow is testing an SMR down in Texas, I believe Galveston. And I've heard that major manufacturers are considering, parking essentially two SMRs next to each other in the next 10 to 15 years, and you could run Dow in the city of Midland off those two nuclear reactors. The technology is amazing. They don't have meltdown capabilities because they're cooled. And so I think I mention all that to say these proposed Senate and House bills and the governor giving her speech without talking about nuclear, I think Michigan leaders should be talking about investing in nuclear and not putting out plans that would drive disinvestment in nuclear energy and would drive essentially nuclear is clean and it's reliable, and you can turn it on heavy if you have demand, and you can turn it down a little if you have less demand. I mean, that is remarkable to put in the grid. And I want Michigan leaders from both sides to stand up and say, whatever plan we have going forward, nuclear has got to be part of it. And I do think it's incredibly hypocritical for the Democrats to be pushing this plan at the same time after they give $150 million to Palisades. It's like, do you like nuclear or do you not like nuclear? And we just have really done a nice job of attracting people to Michigan to work in nuclear facilities. Michigan and Michigan State have the #1 nuclear physicist and nuclear engineer programs in the country. And so I was really sad to see that the plan said nuclear energy production doesn't count as green until 2035. I read that, this is in the bills, I read that as a call to disinvest in nuclear instead of the opposite, which is what I really want. And so our friends on the other side of the aisle, they are fond of saying things like trust the science and trust the experts. And what I would say is that both the science and the experts say that nuclear energy is clean, it's reliable, and it's good for the state of Michigan's grid reliability. And I'm really upset with this sort of Democrat war on nuclear with these bills. Hemlock Semiconductor, I just want to mention that because that's in my district. They are the largest energy user in the state of Michigan. They have a long-term rate plan that's based off natural gas. And if you take that natural gas out of the equation, you're running Hemlock Semiconductor out of business. And the governor's been up there. The president has zoomed in last time I was up there. There's massive support for Hemlock and what they do. And trying to build chips in America instead of China. And so to be pushing a plan that would put Hemlock out of business boggles my mind. I also would say that I'm sort of sad about this whole thing because being at the MPSC and seeing the complexity of the energy field, this should be bipartisan, nonpartisan. Everyone sitting in a room and talking about how to actually build a grid and create clean, reliable energy instead of a partisan plan that's based on talking points. So I believe Representative Outman is going to speak next, and thank you so much for coming.
Good morning. I'm Representative Pat Outman, representing the people of the 91st District. I'm honored to serve on the House Energy and Technology Communications Committee. I've been honored to do so for the last 2 terms. I've gained valuable insights to Michigan's energy landscape, and that's why I feel compelled to speak to you guys here today. Now, I want to emphasize just how critical sound energy policy is, because it impacts every aspect of our life. When energy costs rise, the cost of living rises with it. When energy becomes unreliable, people suffer, and in some cases, people die, as we witnessed in Texas a couple of years ago. Michigan currently faces challenges with power generation and distribution reliability, and it's only getting worse. Just in the past 3 years, we've had 3 max gen events, meaning we came dangerously close to forced blackouts. What industry experts call load shedding as well. We only avoided those very dire situations because some of our big industrial load users voluntarily curtailed their operations, and we narrowly avoided those forced blackouts. Moreover, Michigan has some of the highest energy rates in the entire Midwest, and in the Upper Peninsula, some of the highest in the nation. I bring up those concerns because the plan being proposed by my Democratic colleagues will exacerbate both affordability and reliability in Michigan, and this will disproportionately impact our most vulnerable cities and, citizens and families across the state. The plan also calls for a swift transition away from coal, natural gas, propane, and other sources in favor of wind and solar energy, which are heavily dependent on the sun and wind, obviously, not Michigan's strongest suits. The plan also intends to strip away local control over the siting of wind and solar projects. As a representative of a rural district, I'm deeply concerned about this and the ability to override the authority of local governments accountable to their residents. Large-scale solar projects could have significant ramifications in some communities, especially rural ones. Solar and wind fields, for example, require massive amount of lands that could certainly affect Michigan's food production and available jobs. As you can see by the graphic shown here, this is the amount of land mass required for 100% wind energy. Just a massive amount of land and some significant concerns regarding Michigan agricultural food production here in the state of Michigan. But for other communities, solar and wind farms will be a welcome investment. And the point is, it's local officials who knows what their residents want and what's best in their unique corners of the state. House Republicans stand behind them and respect their authority 100%. The plan coming from my Democratic colleagues doesn't respect their rules, however. It communicates to local officials that their experience and knowledge are insignificant, which could not be further from the truth. In my opinion, the state has no business weighing in on decisions that should be made at the community level. That's why my colleagues and I are digging in our heels when it comes to maintaining local control and ensuring residents' needs are heard and considered. Now, by no means does our caucus aim to resist new energy solutions or get in the way of technological advancements. Quite the opposite, in fact. What we want is for government to keep its hands out of and allow local communities and private businesses to pursue these solutions at their own pace. Forcing progress before it is feasibly achievable is foolish, in my opinion, and involving state government will only increase costs and decrease reliability for private households, to the ultimate detriment of our economy as a whole. If the people of Michigan take one thing from our message today, it should be that regulations does not breed innovation. Thank you all very much.
So just to add a couple things, so every time I hear the Democrats talk about this, they say this is going to create jobs, it's going to save people money, and it's going to somehow lead to all this money from the federal government. That's what they say. So I just want to lay out, we went through this this Rocky Mountain Institute study that they're citing, and there are a few things I noticed from it. Now, number one, I'll just say it doesn't make sense. Like, the people of Michigan have common sense, and so they understand if you get rid of natural gas, you get rid of coal, you limit nuclear, you're not going to be saving money. You're not going to be creating jobs. They understand that on its face. But just to lay this out, what they're talking about appears to be if you spend $70,000 on average buying an electric car, upgrading your windows, buying new boilers, if you do these things, then you'll save a few $100s a month sometime in 2050 on your energy bill. Okay, that's what they're talking about. So spending on average $70,000 to adopt their model, environmental or electric views, to save a few $100s a month on your energy bill is not saving money. That's not looking at the full picture. The other thing I found interesting, so I think they said this was going to create 160,000 jobs in this Rocky Mountain Institute study all these Democrats are citing. What that means, number one, that's measured in something called job years. It's pretty interesting. I hope the MEDC never finds out about this measure because what it is it's counting one job for each year. So under their assumptions, these jobs last 27 years. So one job is 27 jobs under their study. Okay, so if it lasts 27 years, it's 27 jobs. Then that includes direct and indirect. And so having worked with MEDC, I know they never have any actual explanation for how they come up with all these indirect jobs. They say, well, if we build this plant, there'll be 10 indirect jobs. Okay, so remember, their numbers are direct and indirect. So the best I can tell is they believe this is going to create 2,900 jobs. Now, they say it's 160,000, but if you divide that by their 27 years, right, so because these are job years, it's really 2,900, but that includes all the indirect jobs too. So the conclusion I've come to, this is not going to create any jobs. This is crazy math. And so, if we use this for the Ford plant, that created 2,400 jobs. We could probably say that created 300,000 jobs. I don't know why. That's what I mean. That's why if MEDC gets a hold of this, they're going to start using this. But the point is, this is all, this just defies common sense. Getting rid of natural gas plants, limiting nuclear, that's not going to create jobs. It's not going to save people money. We inherently understand that. And then what appears to be the case is when the Democrats are talking about all this federal investment, what they appear to be talking about is tax credits. So you can get a tax credit if you buy an EV. You can get a tax credit if you install new boilers and all these things. So I just concluded we could instead, if we're trying to solve this problem of getting federal tax credits or investment, as the Democrats call it, Governor Whitmer could just make infomercials saying, hey guys, get new windows, get new boilers, get a new electric car. We would see the same investment and savings if we pursued it that way. So just kind of laying this out. Instead, this is just costing jobs. It's going to raise your rates. It's going to make us more dependent on China. It's not realistic. And ultimately, I think it's going to be very harmful to our state. So with that, I don't know if anyone has any questions, but I'll be happy to work with these people up here to answer any.
I know you mentioned a couple of additional options like natural gas and nuclear, but does the House Republican caucus intend on introducing an alternative suite of legislation to come up with in your mind, a more realistic energy plan?
So what we're seeing is that right now what's happening in the state is all of these coal plants are closing. And what is it, I don't remember the date.
2025, I believe.
So the coal plants are closing. Now, I mentioned how China's building 2 a week, but ours are closing. And so we've built some new natural gas plants, and I think if you don't limit these through regulation, you'll see more natural gas plants built in the state, which is going to increase our power that's available. What do you call that? Base load?
Yep, baseload generation.
He's an expert. So you'll have more base load. They never let me serve on the Energy Committee. I was on committees, and they all ganged up on me and said, we don't want you on there. So, and then I'm not on any committees now. So anyway, that's why we've got our experts. But this base load generation, you're going to see more of that, and it's going to come through natural gas because that's the only way to do it where it's reliable and affordable for the people of Michigan. So you're seeing this happen, but it's happening on a trajectory where it makes sense for, affordability and reliability, with also the goal of cleaning the earth, right? So you're doing those things together. So creating government mandates to force that faster without taking into consideration the cost and reliability issues doesn't make sense. So I think we're on that path with some of these, these portfolio standards that are already in place, we saw, what was it, 2012, where they put a plan up there like this, and the voters soundly rejected it. And that was much more reasonable than this plan that we're seeing from the Democrats now. So we're on the path, and you could do things to incentivize. If you put some of these scrubbers on natural gas plants, you can make them even more clean. We could do tax credits and things to encourage that to do more. But new mandates isn't the answer. This is already working, but we have to consider cost and reliability too.
Leader, how can I jump in there?
Yeah, go ahead.
So what I'd say to that is we currently don't have a competing bill package to rival that of my Democratic colleagues. But right now I'm in the process of engaging with my Democratic colleagues, particularly on the Energy Committee, and just relaying to them that this puts Michigan's energy future in jeopardy. In terms of reliability and affordability, this will decimate the state of Michigan. Not a great economic development strategy. We need an all-of-the-above energy strategy with an emphasis on nuclear energy, not an over-reliance on renewable energy. Diversification is key when it comes to energy policy, and not even exclusive to energy policy. When you're investing, they always stress to you have a diversified investment portfolio. And the same is true for energy. We need an all-of-the-above strategy. And that's what I'm trying to emphasize to my Democratic colleagues, again, particularly on the Energy Committee.
I would like to quickly, answer your question. I am putting together a plan of bills, of nuclear bills, that would further investment in nuclear, that would make Michigan more attractive for the coming SMRs, that would maybe cut down on some of the red tape that slows down building nuclear. But the history of energy in Michigan is a 2008 energy plan and a 2015, I believe, energy plan, both legislative, when it became clear that there was an interest in talking about regulated versus deregulated. There has never been a partisan, clean energy package that would affect our field like this before. And I think the number one question I like to ask in committee sometimes is, what problem are we solving? And so I think my friends on the Dem side would say natural gas is, ruining our environment, so we need to quickly phase it out. And what I would say is we have two utilities who have taken some pretty hard lines towards becoming cleaner. And you could argue whether that's good or bad, or it is what it is. They get those approved by the Michigan Service Commission, Public Service Commission. And so it is not typically the legislative role or the legislator's role or the caucus's role to rewrite energy policy in the state of Michigan. It hasn't been until something came up like in 2008, 2015. But if you ask the Democrats, how does this work? How does it work to pull 90% of our baseload energy possibly offline, or 60% if it's natural gas, and to end investment in that? I don't think anyone can explain how it works. And so I don't think that's the right plan. I'm happy to have conversations, especially about reliability, which is, I think, the main conversation in the state of Michigan. If you ask Joe Sixpack on the street, he'd say, my rates are high, and I lost power last week, and it should have got back on quicker. That's sort of the ongoing conversation in the state of Michigan, as we see with some of these major storms. So the Democrat answer to the reliability questions is a completely unrealistic, almost all solar and wind package that's going to raise rates and lower reliability. I don't think that's the right plan. But I will be putting forward something, working with the Democrats regarding nuclear going forward. So I did want to share that with you.
Leader Hall, I just want to make sure I heard this right. You said that if we go to 100% renewables, only solar, it would cover 3 Kalamazoo counties?
Yes.
Okay, so that would be a solar panel covering the entire Kalamazoo County 3 times.
Exactly.
That's what we would need.
Right.
Where did that come from?
So you guys want to share that with him after?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, it's like this. You probably want to know where this came from too. Same place.
All right.
Yeah. No. And
I
what's
believe you had a question, my friend.
All right. What's so infuriating about it is, in order to do this, in order to meet these crazy climate goals, this agenda that many people think is just designed to boost Governor Whitmer's chances in a potential Democrat primary for president, you're going to go to the local governments and take away their local control. And a group of Whitmer appointees on the Public Service Commission are going to tell all your local communities where to put these solar panels. And that's really infuriating to a lot of people.
Can I jump in there and address that?
Mhm.
I just want to briefly address your comment, Kyle, because as a rural representative of a Michigan House district, I've seen the battles that have ensued with citing renewable energies. There's been 29 wind referendums in the state of Michigan. They've all failed. The people of rural Michigan have spoken, and they don't want their communities littered with renewable energy projects. I believe Leader Hall mentioned a ballot initiative in 2012 where the entire state of Michigan spoke and said, we do not want to increase our renewable energy standard to that drastic level. Now, I'm not saying that we're totally anti-renewable, but on a large scale, we have some serious concerns, and especially coming from the rural part of Michigan, we get very sick of Lansing dictating this green energy agenda, but then at the same time saying, well, why don't you guys up in the country deal with all the infrastructure that's needed for these projects? And so you're seeing time and time again, Kyle, that these projects are continuing to fail at the ballot box, and probably will continue to do so until the state jumps in there and overrides local control, which is very much a concern to my constituents.
Was there anything else?
I believe you had a question.
All right.
Yeah, I was curious on what's your plan for working with Democrats then to address some of these concerns, especially at like reintroducing nuclear or reemphasizing nuclear in this project? Because that seems like an area where, at least, for example, the governor has been very supportive of it, fighting to reopen houses.
Just real quick, though, I would say it'll be very interesting to see whether these Democrats that ran as moderates in, southern Wayne County, Monroe County, Traverse City, Battle Creek, Eaton County, Macomb County, are they really going to vote to ban natural gas? And if the Democrats try to moderate this, are the extreme left of their caucus really going to go along with allowing natural gas and nuclear? So I think they've got a problem on their side, but they're not going to get support from us on the Republican side for extreme mandates that are unrealistic and take local control away from our local communities. Now, Graham here, he's a very collaborative guy, and MERS says, remember MERS wrote that story? They said this is in trouble if Graham's not supporting it because he has a history of working with Democrats. So
Thank you.
You have some ideas on how we can work together, so go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, some of my great sadness is that this wasn't a collaborative process, and energy it's too important. It's how we moved on from being an agrarian society. It's too important to not have it be Republicans, Democrats, experts in the field, people from all across the industry sitting and talking about what is the best way to keep hospitals running 24/7 and try to move away from coal in a smart manner, and we are not involved in the conversations. This is a Democrat plan, and this is not a let's get the best thinkers from both caucuses together to talk about the best energy policy for the state of Michigan. So that's a great sadness of mine, and I think it's unhelpful in general when the Sierra Club is trying to write energy policy for the state of Michigan, which probably doesn't agree with the Sierra Club's wants and needs. Regarding energy, there have been some very outspoken Democrats, especially in the House, Representative Steckloff and Representative Andrews. I'll say that my caucus is 100%. When I got my bill signed, there was, regarding the study, they said, well, why didn't you just say we should build a couple reactors? I said, it's just not realistic. But everyone wants nuclear energy in the Republican caucus. We've got a bunch of ideas that have worked in other states to drive investment in nuclear, and so we're basically going to sit down and talk about those and offer that plan going forward. So that is, to answer your question, how I intend to work across the aisle and insert some nuclear into this conversation.
Certainly, and if I could just add, I'm going to continue to engage with my Democratic colleagues on this subject, but what's been the biggest frustration has just been the lack of transparency, the lack of communication. The last two energy rewrites that we've had in the state took multiple years, took an entire legislative term, and they were truly done on a bipartisan basis with a vast amount of stakeholder engagement. This plan was just sprung on us before we broke for a couple of months, and during that time, there's just been no stakeholder engagement. There's been no bipartisan collaboration, and again, that's just been the biggest frustration. But I'm going to try to, brush all those frustrations aside and continue to engage with my Democratic colleagues, again, particularly on the Energy Committee, because as I said in my comments earlier, energy touches every aspect of our lives. You have to have good, sound energy policy, otherwise your state will not prosper. And that's the message that I'm trying to get across to my Democratic colleagues. It's like, hey, we want to reduce carbon emissions along with you, but we have to be responsible about it, and we cannot shoot our economy in the foot, especially when you have countries such as China and India that are producing carbon emissions at such a rapid pace. We can't even begin to offset that, especially when Michigan accounts for 3% of the carbon dioxide emissions in the entire U.S. So we have to have those conversations. We have to continue to reach across the aisle, and that's going to be my mission moving forward.
Two quick things I want to mention. One, it is a little bizarre world with this plan plus Palisades, because the governor has been very outwardly supportive of Palisades and okayed the $150 million. But under the Democrat climate plan, I'm not sure that if Palisades went back online, I'm not sure if they would be allowed to use nuclear energy under the, whatever it is, a 40% allowed cap. So they might get, all this federal and state approval and then not even be allowed to put that energy back into the grid under the plan. And that's really crazy. That makes no sense. It's like speaking out of both sides of the mouth.
Yeah, if I could just add one more thing. We have case studies to follow by example. This isn't just pie in the sky doomsday scenario stuff that we're talking about here. I use Germany as a good case study for this. They tried this approach many years ago, and at one point their rates were 300% higher than the U.S. average rates, and reliability was extremely jeopardized. Rolling brownouts and blackouts were a common occurrence, and they've had to deindustrialize their economy because of that fact. Now they're backtracking. Now they're firing up coal plants like they're going out of style, trying to purchase gas from our adversarial countries such as Russia through the Nord Stream pipeline until that was blown up. And so we have case studies to go by. We can learn by their examples. And that's something I'm trying to stress to my colleagues as well.
Great. Yeah, so, I think part of the goal is to make sure everyone understands the impact of these policies for the people of Michigan and how they're not realistic. So, I hope we'll also have them explain, how is this going to create jobs? How is this going to save people money? Because we've looked very closely and we don't see it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.